and welcome. I'm Nina Burrowes, founder of the Consent Collective. We are on the road and our first stop is Cardiff Women's Centre. Venice Fielding, you are the centre manager and the manager for engagement, is that right?
That's right.
New job title.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our first stop on this magical mystery tour that we're on. We have, of course, our audience of one, co-founder Cynthia. And we wanted to get together to have a conversation because part of travelling around is having this wonderful opportunity to find out more about the work that's happening around the country. And to share some of our tales too. So can you tell me what's happening here at the centre at the moment that you're really excited about?
Okay, can I give a little bit of background to
Go for
the
it.
organisation? So Cardiff Women's Centre is part of Cardiff Women's Aid, and Cardiff Women's Aid is part of RISE, which is the main gateway service for provision for women and children who are experiencing violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence in Cardiff. So Cardiff Women's Centre, we focus on two strands. So we look at early intervention and prevention work and also aftercare and recovery. So talking about early intervention and prevention, we're thinking about going into schools, outreach, media and campaigning, and providing activities that allow women a sort of easier in. So sometimes coming to Women's Aid is really scary and feels like a really big step, and actually if we can allow something that is really informal for women to go, okay, this is the Women's Centre, it's part of Women's Aid, okay, I do actually want to speak to someone. So that's something, is a really exciting strand of the work that we do, is providing that sort of soft landing pad, I tend to call it. And then on the other side, looking at aftercare and recovery, we run a lot of group work, counselling, and those same activities that serve as early intervention and outreach also serve as aftercare and recovery. So things like embodied work like Tai Chi or somatic movement, and being able to provide those activities that are both sort of talking and processing healing, as well as embodied healing, is something that I'm really excited that we're developing.
So we can share that excitement. In fact, so Cynthia and I are going to join the Tai Chi class tomorrow morning, which we can't wait. But creating those spaces where you can come in and do stuff that feels like an everyday thing to do.
Exactly.
And actually it just happens to be deeply healing. But you don't have to walk in the door with this, I have this issue, I am this category of person, if that's where you are on your journey.
You know, and we speak to a lot of women who wouldn't call themselves victims or survivors, or don't think that their abuse was bad enough to warrant using a charity's services. And actually, if then you can provide those things like you say that are every day, and just, oh, that's an activity that I enjoy, I don't have to say I'm a survivor or I've been a victim of abuse. You can actually just go and
I just fancy some Tai Chi.
Yeah. And it's free, and some stuff's online, some stuff's in person now, trying to make it as accessible as possible. Again, that soft in, because it is, we have to recognise how scary it is to say, yeah, I've been subjected to abuse, this has really affected me and I need support.
The other thing about that I really like is the community focus. So I guess what you provide as a centre isn't just your staff and your volunteers and the services, is like actually you could form friendships here, you can meet other people here, you can get those essential messages that you're not alone and you're not broken and this isn't weird, and like all of that is so deeply important and healing and profound, and yet it's actually quite a simple thing as well to do, isn't it? It's just creating spaces for people to arrive in. Yeah,
but we don't have enough of those spaces, and obviously abuse is such an isolating experience, and shame thrives in isolation and the darkness. And when you bring those stories to light, or just share, we had one of our peer facilitators, so we run peer support groups. One of the facilitators in a focus group last night actually said, just having that space, you don't even need to say anything, but where you know from a look that someone understands you and gets your experience, the shame disappears. Having those networks to rebuild your life and be around people who do get it, who aren't judging you or telling you you need to call the police or giving you advice that isn't suitable for you. It's just they share something, even though their background and their story might be completely different.
Yeah.
They still share something.
I've often heard from people, it's like when I walk through those doors, I don't have to walk through those doors with my guard up, and you can just let your guard down, because people like get you. It doesn't mean they're going to get you totally, and there won't be disconnect and stuff, but there just aren't enough of those spaces, especially when we think how common, unfortunately, this stuff is. So I remember I first heard of Cardiff Women's Centre years ago when I first put out The Courage to Be Me, and I was so excited because there aren't actually that many women's centres around the country, and I think it's that community focus I think is really, really exciting and important.
I think that's so right, and we see, as a society, we kind of see abuse as the maybe the much more extreme versions of it, and like you say, it's so common and it's so almost every day that actually we don't notice what may have been done to us and what the effect might have been. And so opening up those spaces is really important to us, in that it's not there's no qualification criteria. You are welcome here. You can come, and we have activities that are just we have a coffee morning. There's nothing, we're not talking about abuse. You don't have to identify anything. You don't have to meet any criteria.
Probably don't even have to drink coffee.
No, absolutely not. Come and have a juice or water, it's fine. But making that some connections, and even if it's not, getting each other because you've all experienced abuse, it's just you all want to be in this space around other women. So
nice. We were chatting before, and we decided that Cynthia and I are going to act as like fairy godmothers stroke crones in the space, and we're just going to visit centres and come in and lavish praise on everyone, tell everyone they're doing a brilliant job. What are you guys doing really well? What are you super proud of? There's a lot to choose from, you see, so you're going to have to pick a smaller number.
I think that we are working towards survivor voice and co-production in everything that we do, and that we've got a real strategic vision for platforming survivor voices, because there's so much in experiencing abuse where your power and your voice is taken away and decisions are made for you, and actually so much of healing is taking that power back. And I don't think, we sometimes talk about empowerment, and I don't think you can give empowerment. I think you can only
it's not something you do to somebody else.
Exactly. That's completely besides its point. So providing this space that is survivor-led, survivor-run, that decisions are co-produced, and that we, again, it's a community. And the Women's Centre is in these kind of, not baby stages anymore, but maybe teenage stages, and there's so many more women that I want for us to be able to reach. So looking at really realistically, who are we not reaching? Who is underrepresented in our services, and how can we go and make it accessible to them? Because for some reason, maybe it's not right now. So that's one thing that I'm, I guess, excited about, maybe before proud of.
Yeah, that's a part of the journey perhaps you're on as a centre, and I'm sure it's something that I feel like as a movement, as a space, of course every organisation is in a different place, but there's definitely this much more a realisation that actually these spaces that we call safe spaces don't feel safe for everybody, and if you want to make them truly open, you have to go out of your way to make it, so having a ramp doesn't mean that your service is accessible. There's so much more to it, and it's exciting to see organisations really doing that work. And I think historically, when you were talking, what I was thinking of was, as a space, we've gone through this kind of professionalisation, which I think is partly good and partly not so great. And so it's kind of interesting that it does feel important to centre survivors' voices in how you do your work, which 30 years ago would have made no sense, because it would have been a kitchen table and a group of survivors that created this entire movement that we're all now part of. And so I'm curious about, what does it mean to be survivor-led in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and does it maybe look more like it did look in the past? I'm just curious.
It's such an interesting journey, isn't it? And it, like you say, there's positives and negatives, and you know, we very much encourage for survivors to come and volunteer and to work. So you know, a lot of our staff are survivors themselves, but then again, there's no obligation to disclose that either.
There's always that tension, isn't it?
Yes. But you know, there's a lot of consultation, and there's a lot of talking to and doing to, and I think we do have to sometimes go a bit out of our comfort zone to step up a bit further from doing to or doing for to doing with.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of deliberate effort and possibly going outside, you know, your comfort zone, because it's giving away some power, and that actually institutionally and organisationally can feel quite vulnerable.
It's that paradox of being a feminist organisation. It's like, how do you lead in a feminist way? How do you make space as an organisation, get funding and tick all of those boxes, which are always this shape?
Yeah.
But then you're funded as a triangle, but you might want to work as a circle. But yeah, that's again part of the challenges of doing this work.
I think one of the big things for us is the capacity to be able to provide a real range of opportunities. So different types of work, different types of volunteering, because then that brings in a wider audience who are interested in different things, and you know, we have this sort of synergy that happens. So 3 years ago we had like 6 volunteers, and now we've got nearly 100.
Wow.
And you know, we have all these different, volunteers running peer support groups, and they design the agenda for those, and they are consulted throughout on how is it working, how do we change it, how do we make sure this works for everyone. And you know, we've got workshops so people can come and share skills that they have, and they're pretty much all volunteer run. So I like to dance, not me personally, I do, but I'm not sharing my dancing skills, but you know, someone comes and they like to dance, so they come and they share their love of dance with people, and women come along and dance along with them, and it's really sort of meeting people where they're at and using their skills and providing enough opportunities that they feel like they can get involved. Just the holistic nature of that is so much bigger than those individual roles or the individual activities. It just creates so much more energy, because everyone feels like they've got a place and like they belong and they can give something, and no matter what you've been through, you still have value and something to give, even if that's really hard to see right now. Yeah, all of that is so important, and to me that really, it's a counteract or a counterbalance to this isolation that can happen, because sometimes with organisations like this, it's come in for your one-to-one support, which can be important for the healing process, but it doesn't do anything to kind of counteract that isolation of the abuse in the first place, and how you're feeling and what society is like. And so I'm excited. So when we're coming back around in the summer or next year, like, what is it that is maybe a seed of an idea now that you hope is bearing fruit a year from now? Yeah, well, I think hopefully when you come back, we will have this. I'm
going to hold you to this. So
we're working on it. An infrastructure, because an infrastructure that connects our crisis services to our aftercare and recovery services, because where the aftercare and recovery stuff came from is, you know, we've got women going through these crisis support package one-to-one with their worker, and these 12 weeks of support kind of end, and then what happens now? And we've got all these activities now that happen after, but there's still a bit of a gap here from ending this crisis support to starting. And sometimes there needs to be. Sometimes it's not. You can't jump from, okay, right, I've moved out of refuge and I've gotten my my kid in school, and then I'm going to start counselling or group work. Sometimes you do need that space. But really putting in an infrastructure that smooths out that journey and that makes the services available to that woman when she needs them and when she's ready for them, and it's not that, right, you've had your support work and now you're done, off you go, live your own life. Yes, you need that independence.
Goodbye and good luck.
But the healing doesn't stop. and you need to be able to access support, whatever that looks like. That might be really informal, that might be friends and family who get you. You might not need institutional support, but it can be really helpful, and it can be different points in that journey are different things are going to be helpful. So that's what I would really like to see in sort of 6-9 months time, is that infrastructure is down pat, and we're able to give women access to their healing activities that are appropriate to them and suited to them when they're ready for them.
Nice. Cynthia, do you make a note of that? Okay, we'll be checking.
Accountability.
No, it sounds like, everything you're describing, it might sound simple to listen to, but having worked in this space and borne witness to a lot of organisations and how they work, what you're talking about is actually really difficult to achieve. And so I'd be really curious about, we live in such a, here's the protocol, here's the procedure, here's what we can give you, and there's a real tension between that, which is very often driven by funding and these kinds of things, and then the reality and the nuance of what someone actually needs and how that flexes and changes over time. So I'd be really curious to take notes when we're back next time.
It's an exciting time to see what happens. So in terms of your journey then, where has the Consent Collective come from, and particularly the road trip?
The road trip. The road trip was born on the South Downs Way. So it was this year, my goodness, it was only this year, but last winter, and I think last winter was a very particular kind of winter. It was, a winter of lockdown. And I feel like I felt personally a very strong desire to emerge, almost not quite from hibernation. We'd actually been working very hard. So I just completed one of our resources called How Do People Heal from Trauma, which is this online learning retreat that we've got, which was my lockdown baby. That's where I went to. That was such a beautiful thing to craft in, short, dark days of winter. It was such a personally healing project to just immerse myself in. But it was a lot of work, and so I'd completed that. Winter was ending, lockdown was starting to kind of ease off a bit, and we both of us really felt the need to emerge. And so we decided we would walk the South Downs Way, which is 100 miles, Eastbourne to Winchester. And lockdown hadn't quite finished, so we were just doing it in our own car and working out the route, and we just started walking. And then there's something so deeply healing about journeying, which I notice we're doing now. I feel like we're still on the walk, right? But there was something healing about moving our bodies, being in nature. And what emerged on that walk, and I can't say, it was this day and it was this moment and it was this idea. The whole thing just emerged because it was a combination of, man, this is really healing to be out in nature. And I really like walking. And we have some of the best conversations when we're walking, about work, about our relationship, about life, about growth. And so they were bubbling up. And what emerged out of all of that was, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to do the work we do, but do it in this environment? Like, let's work in the outdoors. Let's have a retreat center. Let's make fire circles. And, so that was there as a thought. And the journeying was there. And then just a real desire. I think this is an adventure. But it all just seemed to make sense. And the only way I can describe it is, personally, my body, the whole idea of let's just pack up our home and not have a permanent home and go on the road and let's meet people. Let's be in the outdoors. Let's visit retreat centres. Let's see where that path takes us without knowing the end result. It just resonated in my body. It doesn't make much logical sense, but my body just was like, yes. And so literally when we finished the South Downs Way, since then it was quite a big project to leave home and keep the business going and pack up and look at all of our stuff and like, what do you not need to see for 2 or 3 years, and what might you need next summer but not this winter, and like that's a whole job. But here we are. First we went to London first, but it always felt like Wales was going to be the first real stop. So now we're in this process of what does it mean to journey and visit centres like this, and what are we passing through? Are we fairy godmothers? How do you connect with people? And of course we're holding circle whilst we're here, which is beautiful in and of itself. But I think the most special thing about what we're doing is it isn't really about logical, rational, here's the plan sense. There's none of that. It's all about, it just feels good in my body, it feels like the right direction, it feels healing, it's exciting. I think we need to go this way. So we are.
I think that is so important. We're so disconnected from our bodies and our intuition, and actually there's so much wisdom there, that listening to it and that awareness of what does this feel like for me. If we could teach that in schools and teach it to children, everyone would be a lot healthier.
And isn't that just real consent though? Like, consent, your consent with yourself is not this rational, logical thing. It's an embodied resonance of yes or no. So I love, I don't know if you've read Audre Lorde's essay, Uses of the Erotic.
No.
It's phenomenal. If you haven't read it, check it out. But it is basically, it speaks to that. It speaks to the idea that pleasure and our ability to experience a resounding yes in our bodies, whether that's from a sexual experience or just something we find deeply pleasurable, like a brilliant conversation or a walk in the South Downs, like that's how we understand what is our yes. And until we're in touch with that, how do we know we're not living lots of no's? So it's actually deeply political as well, to just follow that resonance. And we're seeing a lot more recognition of things like trauma and stress in the body, and those negative emotions, but maybe less so of what's the counterbalance to that. What does positive actually mean? So we've had quite long chats, Cynthia and I, about our work, and we feel like our work, when you work in the sexual violence space or the relationship abuse space, we seem to in the sector define ourselves on the negative, on the harm that's caused, and we're very clear our work is about healing and it's about consent. And actually when you reframe it and say, no, this isn't about being broken, this isn't about what trauma is, all this work is about healing. It feels like it's a slight shift, but it's actually a phenomenal shift. And when we focus on, well, what does it mean to be whole? What does it mean to be healed? Like, for me, it's no surprise that we made this resource that's all about healing, and now we're on this journey. I think actually the one follows the other, because I feel like our ultimate question is, as people who work in this space, what happens when we just center ourselves on healing? And like, to me, that is deeply political. It's deeply about all the things we care about. It just gives the emphasis on something else that's truly powerful.
And is there a state of being finally healed, or is that just a journey as well? Not just a really important journey.
really important one.
But there's not really right, I'm done, my healing is finished.
If you follow a protocol thing, they would say, wouldn't they? They would say, what's your follow-up measure? So it'd be like 2-year follow-up. But then if you, actually in this space of you're really living the work and you deeply care about the people and all the rest of it, you understand that this is, like, for me, there are moments where I clearly need to do some more healing work. But I find that in my life, life will throw up more things to heal from, more opportunities to heal, and all the work I've done in the past will be waiting for me as resources and tools and relationships to meet the next moment.
Yeah.
And I think if you go through a healing process, it doesn't matter what you were healing from. And in fact, this is what I love about our resource. We're not here to talk about what caused the harm. It doesn't matter if were you in a car crash, was it child abuse, do you not know, or just holding something that was maybe your parents' healing work that they were never able to do. When we talk about healing, we're talking about something that is really about life. It's like, can you grow? Do you retract? How can you be open-hearted under these circumstances? And you know, I feel like the tools and relationships and practices, a lot of this for me is about daily practices as well, that I've had to equip myself with. They are there for me when one day the thing I'm trying to sit with is grief or loss, or, you know, something I haven't necessarily experienced yet.
Yeah.
So that's why I get so excited about this work, because it really has the potential for helping people very deeply with kind of like life.
Yeah.
In its messy, glorious, amazing, profound beauty. I feel like that actually is what this work is about.
There's I don't know, a bit of a narrative of personal development and healing, and this, you know, we're always focusing on it and how can we develop further, but it's about enjoyment of life and pleasure, and the point of healing and personal development and things is so that you can love living your life, right?
Yeah.
It's not to be in a perpetual state of healing or always reliving your trauma to be able to process it. Even if you don't, I don't know, if other people maybe don't see you as healed or whatever, that as long as you're living a life that works for you and it is joyful and beautiful for you, I think that's what's the end goal, if there is one.
If there is one. Our audience is applauding quietly. You know, there's a word we've been focusing a lot on recently, and that's abundance. And I feel like that is a word that's worth centering when we think about our work as activists in this space, as when we think about how can we help people. And I feel like, surely the end goal is not, if we focus on the brokenness, does it make it so that we don't focus enough on the rich, abundant, you know, joyful, like how do you do this work and do it with joy? What does working in a way that is full of abundance look like, feel like, and all of the rest of it? And I do feel like it feels at the moment that can be sometimes a bit jarring in the space, but not, it's like jarring because it doesn't fit the protocols and maybe some of the procedures, but it totally fits the human beings. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, that, like abundance. And so, I think part of this journey is also, we're just feeling into what does the work look like for us. And there will be challenges in that, but you know, I'm also totally open to the idea that you can do these things and they can be done with complete ease. Why not? Like, why can't? And so far it's been a journey full of ease, more or less.
So when you do come back around next year, what kind of things do you hope to have done or seen, or what differences do you...
What differences? Okay, so we're going to be checking up on you in terms of your processes from crisis to life afterwards. You can check up on us. So we're holding, one of the things we're centering this journey on at the moment is we're holding Circle, specifically on the question, how do people heal from injustice? And that has been something we've been looking at for quite a few months so far. And we've been doing what we call gathering wisdom, through Circle. So Circle is kind of like the most gorgeous, rich version of a focus group you can imagine. And that's what we're doing at the moment, and that's what we're here to do later and tomorrow. By the summer, I hope that wisdom has transformed into some kind of ritual, some kind of invitation from us, along the lines of, are you trying to heal from an injustice to do with relationship abuse, sexual violence, whether that's something you've experienced yourself or it's something that you've been impacted by because it was your daughter or your parent or your partner. Would you like to come and join us for this process, this ceremony, this experience? So that's what I hope is different with that work, that we're no longer gathering wisdom, that we're actually offering people the opportunity to come, to bring their people, to participate in an event, which will be so simple. You know, it will involve poems and talking and listening, and you know, it won't be so different, I'm sure, from the circles we're holding now, but the centre of it, the purpose will be to give people a public space. Because at the moment, what are the public spaces that are about healing, let alone healing from injustice? Like, our courts do not offer, you know, they're not, that's a certain category of justice, and often it's the cause of more pain that you need to heal from. But we have the power as a community to say, no, I can bear witness. I can listen to you. I can validate what you're saying. I can hear it. I can show you that I'm able to hear it. I'm happy to hear it. I can stand with you. And I think we have these simple gifts within our reach. And so I hope that that's what the Consent Collective is doing next time we're in Cardiff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think those thinking about different forms of justice and the way that the criminal justice system can be re-traumatizing, and the way that you know, you might start some proceedings and never get anything like what you hope to get out of that. And where is the sort of closure? And actually sometimes that is in community with other people who've been through something similar, and just sharing that this really traumatized me again, and to be held and to have that safe space, and to know that other people share some similar worries or shames. And shame doesn't thrive when you bring it out into the light in a safe place. I mean, shame on you, justice system. That's the place where the shame belongs, if it has a space. You know, we've been gathering wisdom in the circle, and from the circles we've held already, one of the questions we've been focusing on to start with is, well, what does injustice feel like? Almost, what are the feelings that we need to heal from? And one of the themes that came up from that was foolishness. This idea that, gosh, I was so foolish to think that if I reported, I would be believed, validated, and something, you know, negative would happen to the perpetrator. And that has no place. It has no place. But we who work in this sector, we know it's there. And so I feel like, I really hope that the kinds of work that we're doing can really help not reframe. You're not reframing that foolishness. It's just simply, you shouldn't feel foolish. The system is broken. You are not broken. In fact, by reporting, you did your bit, and that's all you can ask yourself to do. And you don't have to do that if you choose not to, but you did. And you shouldn't feel foolish for recognizing what happened wasn't right. For having the courage to report, for speaking your truth, there's a lot of fuel to this journey, and these, you know, that's certainly a really important part of it. I did want to ask what are some of the, I know it's early days, but some of the sort of nuggets of wisdom that you might have gathered so far. That's obviously one of them.
You know, I there's so much. I feel so, that abundance word, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much. Let's talk about that. It's amazing. And I think that might be one of them, in the sense that, you know, when we actually get into a deep conversation about healing from injustice, it's not a dark, closed, cold, empty conversation. It's, oh my God, it's so rich. It has so much potential. And I think the stuff that really makes me smile is when we get to a stage where we're thinking about, gosh, how do you heal audaciously? You know, not quietly, like audaciously.
Yes.
What does that look like? We use Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise, as as a piece of inspiration in our circle. And I'm so inspired specifically by her oil wells and diamonds and gold mines. Like, there's something about being unapologetically, defiantly, but audaciously and powerfully, and not with bitterness. Just I found my power, I'm in my power. I find it actually as a source of power. So I don't have to protect it. And there's something, you know, that poem, right, you could spend, you know, you spend a lifetime looking just at that. But that's the stuff that really excites me. It's let's transcend our understanding of justice and think about audacity.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering as well, connected to that, we often think about healing as a solitary sort of experience, and actually, do you think that in particular, well, healing in general, but that gaining of power and audacity perhaps has to be done in relationship?
Yeah, I think the trauma literature tells us that we need relationship to heal. So like when we have this individualistic model, to me that's all part of the systems and structures and power structures of society that tells us, oh no, we live in a meritocracy, so if you've done very well and you're something like a prime minister, you totally deserved it. Not that you benefited from the structures that benefit you and that there was privilege in there and all of these other things. And I think when we understand how those things impact on even what is mental health, what can we consider mental illness, and then how do you heal? I think our society tells us you should be able to fix yourself. Yeah. And if you haven't been able to fix yourself, there's something wrong with you. And yet the trauma literature tells us you have to have relationship to heal. Like, you need co-regulation with another body. You don't get to do that on your own. Our nervous system tells us that us at our best is us in community, that our attributes of kindness and generosity are some of our best survival mechanisms. And so I think now is a really great time to kind of push back against that, fix yourself. And even, I would even push back the idea that it's work. You have to work on yourself and, you know, there's a missing piece. You're whole. You're already whole. You already have everything you need. You might need some better relationships. You might need some skills in order to work with those relationships. You might need some skills and some practices to help your body calm enough in order to get what's possible. But everything in the trauma literature tells us that relationship is what we need, which should not, you know, when we're born into relationship, it shouldn't be like a surprise to us. And the reason why it's kind of shocking to this kind of self-help idea is purely, it's just politics, it's power, it's paradigms. So I feel like sectors like ours should be really leading in that message of we heal in community. There's no other way to do it.
I completely agree, and pretty much everything we do in the Women's Centre in Aftercare and Recovery is group. We do run counselling, but everything else is groups of people getting together and doing, you know, as I said before, these different activities, whether they are actually therapeutic or they are art or movement, and doing those things in community is so much more powerful.
Before we wrap up this conversation, because I know you're a very busy person, you got like 100 volunteers to organise, let alone the team of staff it takes to organise 100 volunteers.
It's not work, it's play.
Oh, I'm glad you feel like we feel the same. And we're like, it's like joyful service. It's only work when a spreadsheet is involved or, you know, stuff like that. But it's 16 Days of Activism is upon us. How much does activism play a part in the work that either the Women's Centre is doing or your own role? What kind of activism stuff?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we build on such a history of activism, don't we? The women's movement is activism. It's been women coming together and collectives, and And I think we sort of build it in a certain sense to everything that we do. So I'll take the example of our volunteers. All our volunteers are trained, and within that training, although they may not use it in their role, we will always build in, you know, how to take disclosures well, and how to kind of raise awareness and talk about gender stereotypes or harmful myths and things like that, so that even, again, if that's not part of their role, they still are then equipped with the skills to go out into their community and do these tiny little droplets of work that add up to this ocean.
Yeah.
And for the 16 Days of Activism this year, we're kind of focusing on sustainability. So it's been such a tough year for women and anyone affected by violence and abuse. You know, we've had Sarah Everard and Sabina Ness's really high profile murders, and, you know, talking to our staff, that's been quite traumatic to watch. And that's the case for anyone. You know, these different activism groups have sprung up, and it's hard work, and you know, when you're engaging in this, the sort of broken side of what we're talking about and trying to fix the issues, it can be really difficult. So what we're focusing on is this sustainability of how can you keep doing that if you're interested in doing that work. How can you keep doing that in the long term and look after yourself and your well-being and make it joyful and playful as well?
Like,
sorry.
Yeah, no, like, how can you do it and it can actually be healthy for you, like a good thing for your mental well-being, rather than or you better mitigate the potential harm of placing yourself.
And so many women come to volunteer or activism because they want to give back, because they've been helped in some way, or because they don't want others to suffer the same injustice that they did. And so how do you do that in a meaningful way that is helpful for you, is healing for you, is the right thing on your journey? So we're going to be running a couple of peer support groups that are kind of more open to the general public and those who are interested in activism. And again, those kind of events help to bring more people in and make them aware of what we do, and that it might be a place for them as well. And yeah, kind of focusing on those self-care resources, really. There's a lot of work to do, and we can't sit by and kind of watch a generation of activists burn out and not be able to carry on that work, because we keep passing it down and standing on the shoulders of the women that have come before us, and we need to kind of pass on a legacy as well of that being sustainable.
Yeah, I think there's such important applause from the audience there. I can see it in the corner of my eye, like, yeah, you're speaking our language. I know a lot of people who work in this sector. I know so many people who work 50-hour week, 60-hour week, and they've maybe done that for 20 years. And it's not sustainable. It's certainly not healthy. And I think there's a reality, you know, this is part of the political reality of the space. Like, this society does not make our work easy. So there's a reason why it feels like it's an uphill struggle. And yet, how do you place yourself in that terrain and do it joyfully, healthily, full of love, and all of these other things, especially in this social media? And there's a lot of toxicity out there at the moment. So and you know, whenever I see all of this stuff, I just see trauma. So I think, yes, certainly for us, like, that really resonates, because the activism I want to do, I want to do it from the parts of me that are healed, that are in the present moment. I don't want to act out or project or give you my reactions that are really about fight and flight. But a lot of that does happen in this space because there is a lot of trauma here. It's very stressful, it's hard, and it feels important. And so there can be this hurry because people are struggling, and that's true. But yeah, what does activism look like when it's from a connected, grounded, balanced, whole, and deeply audacious and powerful place? Like, that's the bit, isn't it? It's not about stepping away from society and not caring. Like, I'm like, what is us at our most powerful?
Yeah, well-behaved women seldom make history.
Exactly. No, there's no well-behaved women in this room.
Yeah, well, I think that it has to be in community, right? You can't do activism by yourself and hope to make a difference. It has to be in community and experiencing in community, not just doing, like experiencing the things together and the joys and the setbacks, and being able to share, this is difficult. And, like you said, in our sector, there's a lot of survivors. And so there can be, trauma is re-brought up by the work that we do. And so having a space to be able to share that, we actually, within our team, we have sort of mini peer support sessions, and our group comes together. And this month, we were organically ended up talking about the ways that we have kind of been coping is not exactly the right word, but dealing with what had been, quite a stressful month previously with more sort of world events. And we ended up coming up with this sort of list of tips or things that were keeping us sane and joyful. And, it was things about finding something separate from the work that is joyful and creative, and making enough time for yourself, whether that's having a cup of tea in bed in the morning before you get going, or writing a wellness journal, or whatever it is, giving yourself 5 minutes or half an hour that is for you, because you are the most important thing in your world. And if you're giving everything of yourself to something else, then how do you come back to you and again sustain?
And even if you're giving everything of yourself in that way, actually, I would say the best version of what you have to offer isn't from that place of actually I'm exhausted, actually I'm fraught. Like that's actually not the best you have to offer. And I think one of the challenges of what Cynthia and I are trying to do is like, we want to build this gorgeous retreat centre. We want it to be for the space. And then a question is, but will people take the time off of what they see as the work to come to the space to centre that healing work? And I could give you 1,000 reasons why they should, and 1,000 reasons why that is the work. Like that is it, right there. It should be top of the list, not the optional extra. But I think we have such a mindset in the space to kind of become aware of. But certainly, like, I feel my journey as an activist, the role of healing in that has really shifted over the last few years. And from this idea that, self-care. I used to think I was really good whenever I was delivering training, I would always mention self-care. Like at the end, last slide, don't forget this. And I feel like that's, I've grown. And I don't often talk about self-care actually specifically anymore. I feel like actually it's about healing, which, as you say, you do in community, so the self-care bit is difficult. But beyond that, I feel like my work as an activist is this healing work. Like I think that is it. If we were to focus on healing ourselves, healing each other, being in community, I think we would, if we were all to do that, I think we would look around and hang on a minute, the environment seems a bit better. The social structures in our communities seem a lot healthier. We seem to be able to communicate and do consent a lot better. I applaud your 16 Days of Activism focus. We should be looking out on social media if you've got stuff out there.
Yeah, it will be.
And if there's anyone who's been watching this and they are local to Cardiff and they want to get involved, what kinds of things should they do in order to do that? As you said, social media, we're very active, so checking that out, quite easy to find, Cardiff Women's Aid, have a Google. There will be a couple of groups for 16 days and different self-care resources and things to take a look at. If you want to come along and try out, a workshop or an activity, you are welcome. They are open to all women, regardless of whether you identify as a survivor or not. And for volunteering, if that's something that someone's interested in, cardiffwomensaid.org.uk, our website, it's all on there, and jobs as well. We're always looking for
as I said before, women from maybe underrepresented backgrounds for both volunteering and jobs, and we're regularly recruiting, so come and get involved.
Awesome, come and get a job. And if you want to know more about our work at the Consent Collective, just check out our website, follow us on social media. I'd love to offer you a job, but there's only space for 2 of us in the band currently. But keep an eye on social media.
Follow along the journey.
Exactly, we will need help. If you're a carpenter, probably check out our social media feed in a couple of years' time. We'll desperately need your help.
I can't wait to see more of your journey and how your ideas for the retreat centre come along. And
yeah, I'm kind of curious. Where does it go, and does it end? And if so, how? No idea.
It's a really exciting time.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you, Venice.